You know what's coming.
Your daily deep dive into everything Utah Jazz.
It's time.
All season long and even in the off season. It's Jazz Daily with JJ and Alex on your exclusive home of Utah Jazz basketball. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, everybody, welcome on in. It is JJ and Alex, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Happy Friday to you. Our program is brought to you by the great G2G Bar. And, of course, it is a Friday. And, of course, we are at the Doug Smith Mitsubishi, which, of course, brings you the cut this hour. And the Doug Smith brand of vehicles, of course, all across the board. Chevy, Dodge, Ram, Subaru, Kia, of course, and now the Mitsubishis here in American Fork. Nobody does cars like Doug, and we're at the Mitsubishi here in American Fork, like I said, so come down and hang out. Chris said, by the way, did you notice that so Chris divulged to us that he's in a grumpy mood. It's like the nicest grumpy guy I've ever met. You know
I know,
what I mean?
right? I'd hate to see him happy.
I'm in a little bit of a tough mood right now. I'm like, he's the nicest guy ever. So come down and hang out with Chris and his guys and get one of these awesome cars. Let's kick off the cut, though, this hour. Let's jump right in. Eric Spyropoulos, who's, of course, writing for the Utah Jazz and NBA.com, joining us again for another week. And, Eric, thanks for being with us, man.
Thanks for having me, yeah.
Tell me about this Jazz team right now, like how you look at it, because I have come around, man. Like, I have I've bought into all of the things that are going on with the development of this team. But dropping 14 in a row on the road is tough, and you know that Grizzlies team was very good. But we've seen a pattern of this team playing really, really tight games and still losing. But that's the part, I think, where you have the balance of good development minutes from these young guys in close games. And even if you lose, you still feel like you win. Is that about right? Like, I mean, how do you look at it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I look at it a very similar way. There were obviously there were no wins on the road trip, but like you said, there were a lot of close competitive games. I mean, they almost came back from, I think, 20 down against the Celtics on the road. They almost did another comeback on the road against a really good Grizzlies team. And I think the most important thing about those comebacks is, like you mentioned, the young guys are getting some of those minutes. You know, Cody Williams is closing the other night. Kyle Filipowski had a couple of huge games on the road trip. Obviously, Isaiah Collier has been, kind of doing his thing for the past 2 months or so as the starting point guard. But I think it's been a good sign of development for the young guys. And then even as some of the vets have kind of returned from injuries and sprinkled back into the lineup, I think you're seeing a nice balance between, a guy like Colin Sexton coming back and playing and setting the table and, letting those young guys kind of flourish around him. So hasn't translated to wins, but I think, like you said, if you're looking specifically at the player development over the course of the season, I think you're seeing a steady uptick, especially for the rookies since the turn of the new year.
Just the last couple of weeks, I'm looking at, some of these guys that have gotten a lot of time, and I look at what Kyle Filipowski's been able to do with some of those minutes. Obviously, Lowry being out or Walker being out, they've had to lean on him a little bit more. But what stands out to you about what Kyle Filipowski has been able to do with the extra minutes that he's been able to receive because of guys that have been out?
The biggest thing that stands out is the three-point shooting, and he's been pretty open about how he adjusted his jump shot during the season, which is pretty rare. You don't usually see players make an adjustment to their jump shot during a season, but he and Will Hardy had a conversation earlier in the year about a slight change they could make to his jump shot to kind of speed it up a little bit. And I mean, the results are really what's allowing him to kind of expand his game and have more of an impact. I mean, since the All-Star break, 47% from three. Obviously, he's not going to shoot that well over the course of an entire season, but what it does is not only does it allow him to provide some floor spacing for the Jazz offense, but it forces his man, especially if he's playing at the center spot, to come out and guard in the perimeter. So you're removing that opposing big man from protecting the rim. And then obviously earlier in the year, even when his jump shot wasn't falling, Filipowski was still able to kind of play make and set up his teammates. And so him hitting the three only allows him to do that even more. So the three-point shot has really been a huge weapon for him as of late, and it's opened up, not only more stuff for his own game, but because of that, it's opened up a lot of things for his teammates as well. And I think if that can continue, you're seeing a guy who could be really productive, especially at that center spot on the offensive end of the floor.
It's hard to get attention, obviously, from the rest of the league when when you're winning 15 games to losing over 50, and everybody looks and goes, okay, here's the standings. All right, the Jazz are firmly in that 14% to try to get that that number one overall pick in the draft. But what do you think across the league the vibe is on the type of job that Will Hardy's doing? It's a difficult one, but what do other people think about what this guy's potential is? I mean, obviously he came in very young, but what are the thoughts on Will Hardy as a head coach in this league?
I mean, I think there's a lot of praise for Will around the league. I think you can see it, in different ways too. I mean, you mentioned how competitive the Jazz have been as of late. I mean, this is a time of year where a lot of teams, especially younger teams that are at the bottom of the standings, they can kind of get into kind of a mental fatigue, and you see a lot of more mental lapses. And I think, there obviously are a few exceptions here or there within games, but the Jazz have still been able to remain competitive, nearly pull off some comebacks. And again, it goes back to the player development too. Everyone knew coming into the season that was going to be the focus. And, like we just talked about, the signs are really trending really well in terms of that area of developing those young guys. And it's not easy when there's, I think 8 players or 9 players age 23 or under on the roster. It's not easy to get them all to buy into their roles, to execute, things of that nature. And so I think you're seeing Will do a really good job of getting people to buy in, helping with the player development aspect of it, and helping this team remain competitive even during a stretch where, this is where teams can kind of go off the rails for a young team as they kind of look forward to the offseason. I don't think you're seeing that with this Jazz squad.
A year ago at this time, Walker Kessler was wrapping up what was a pretty disappointing sophomore season in the NBA, and a lot of us were wondering, man, what's his long-term future in this league? Where does he go from here? Why did things go wrong in his second year? What changed? What happened? He has responded so well in year 3 to the point now where we're saying this guy is top 15, maybe top 10 in the league when it comes to centers and all-around play. I'm looking at his last 10 games, and he's got 14 points, 14 rebounds, 3 blocks per game while shooting 75% from the field, and that includes some assists as well. What has Walker Kessler done this season to change perspective around the league about who he is as a player, and just how much has he improved this season, and what does it mean for his future?
Yeah, I mean, it's perhaps the story of the season for the Jazz is Walker Kessler's kind of resurgence in a way from that sophomore season. He talked about early in the year how he met with a mental strength coach, and not only did he add weight and strength to his body to help him on the floor, but he's also tackled that kind of mental health component off the floor to kind of reshift his perspective about just, being an NBA player and the opportunity he has on a nightly basis, and not dwelling too much on mistakes that he makes, within a game or within a season. And I think all that's combining for obviously a career year for him, protecting the rim. The Jazz are having him, even do some switching on the defensive end just to open up the possibilities for him down the road, which I think is a great idea. The rebounding has been incredible. He's the best offensive rebounder in the league. The shot blocking obviously continues to be elite. And then you mentioned that interesting thing about his passing. He's getting the ball in his hands a little bit more, and he's making some plays with it, which I don't think many people expected from him coming into the season. And when you're in a season like this focused on player development, that's what you should be doing. You should be giving your players additional opportunities to see what they can do, to work on their skills, to just put them in a little bit more uncomfortable situations and see what happens. And I think pretty much across the board, Walker Kessler has passed with flying colors. And so I think, a year ago, people are kind of questioning what his future is, and now I think you're questioning how high he can get up in terms of the center ranks across the league, and you're looking at the Jazz having a foundational piece at a crucial position.
One of the things that, Eric, that we were laughing about this week, obviously, it happened, I think, when we were on the air, the news dropped that the Jazz had been fined for how they had been representing, it must have been Lowry. I think it was specifically for Lowry and how, the injury report and all those things. What's the balance there? What gets you fined versus what's the game that all these teams are trying to play when it comes to making sure guys are getting the needed rest if they are still trying to nurse an injury versus, just straight up keeping guys out of games, even these superstars that they want to keep playing in the league.
Yeah, I think the important thing about the player participation policy that was, the league deemed to be violated was that it specifically relates to what the league considers a star player, which is anyone who's been an all-star in the previous 3 seasons before that one. And so Lowry falls into that category by being an all-star a few years ago. There's a couple other guys on these kind of, young rebuilding teams like a Scotty Barnes on Toronto who also would count for that policy. It's an interesting thing. I think the league is trying to, obviously there's been an emphasis on, removing this, tanking by, flattening the lottery odds and such, and this player participation policy. But it is a delicate balance, like you said, because, Lowry did have, back injuries basically starting from the first week of the season. And I think for that first month or so, he missed about a week early in the year with the back. And I think throughout the season, I think you've seen moments where it seems like that back maybe never fully healed or has been, a little bit limiting in terms of his ability to kind of be really physical on the inside. So it's a balance because obviously you don't want to, put any of your vets out there in a position where they might, be vulnerable to an injury that could take them out for next season when the Jazz continue to kind of want to hope to be on the upswing. So I think, this one comes down, and I think Lowry spoke to the media at shoot-around today, and he basically talked about how the rest of the year it's going to be a really careful consideration based on how his back is feeling and then how the schedule comes out with like back-to-backs and such to see when he's going to be back on the floor.
Well, tonight the Utah Jazz host the Toronto Raptors, 7:30 p.m. tip-off. It's one of these weird situations, again, where both teams don't have as much incentive to win as they do to lose. It's weird, it's strange, and I think it's tough for fans. But what can fans expect if they come to the game tonight? What are they going to see? Who's going to be on the floor between the Jazz and the Raptors? Yeah,
and the Jazz, for the most part, John Collins injured his ankle the other night. He's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks, so he'll be out. And Keontae George is also still out with the foot injury. But besides that, the Jazz are going to be pretty healthy. And I think that gives a lot of intrigue in terms of, seeing a few of these lineup combinations that fans haven't really gotten to see that much this year with, like, Kyle playing next to Lowry. I think Lowry, Kyle, and Walker playing together would be a really interesting lineup combination to give you a lot of size and attack the glass. And then obviously you want to continue to see that Isaiah Collier, Colin Sexton, how they mesh in the backcourt. And, Toronto's going to be a little bit banged up. They got a couple guys questionable. They've been actually one of the hotter teams in the league because they've been playing a few other teams that are kind of in that bottom of the standings mix. But last week Walker Kessler had one of, if not the best game of his career in Toronto with the 25 rebounds, 8 blocks. So I think there's a lot of intrigue in tonight's game from a Jazz perspective of, not necessarily the outcome, but like what you're going to see from the mix of some of these young guys and some of the vets in the lineup.
Eric Spyropoulos, you can see his byline there at the NBA.com Utah Jazz page. And we appreciate you coming on the program here. We're looking forward to another fun night with this team. And thanks for hanging out with us again. We'll chat with you later.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
There you go. Eric Spyropoulos, everybody. I think that, again, I think that I'm starting to buy in, JJ. It's hard to tell people to buy in, and then you yourself don't really feel like, what this team's doing or
Once you accept the reality of it and you watch it with a different lens, you can enjoy it.
I think if you had a head coach who was fake or, was a difficult personality and was hard with the media and the thing is Will Hardy's such a straight shooter. Like, I feel like this is the way he's going to act when they're winning too.
Yeah.
Right. I just don't see.
That's his assignment during this point in time is to maintain that kind of a consistency and trying to maintain that culture that they talk about. It's a really tough ask to tell a coach, hey, we want to maintain a winning culture and a really healthy culture that's built on the principles that you learned under Coach Pop, but we're going to lose 50 games.
Right.
60 games.
And he's young, and
that's
so
a lot to ask.
He's young. He could get impatient very, very quickly.
Sure.
Like all those things. And I think that he has. He's in his third year. That's a lot. That's a lot of basketball games that he's already coached at the head coach level in the NBA.
I hate to say this, but this is not the last year of this. There's probably going to be another year,
at least. right? Maybe a couple more.
This is a lengthy rebuild.
In terms of losing seasons, couple, maybe 2 or 3 left.
Look at the Spurs. They got Victor Wembanyama. They won the lottery. They got a generational player. They're going to miss the playoffs again and for the second year after winning that lottery.
And the year after they win the lottery and they get him, and then it's the most generational player that we've seen in a long time in a draft, and they win 20 games.
Right.
You know, and you go, okay, this takes a lot more of a development, and obviously it's going to take a minute. So
a lot of patience.
Jazz Raptors tonight, actually right after we wrap up. You're going to get a 6:30 pregame and a 7:30 tip-off at Delta Center. So there you go. All right, we'll be right back. We got more to go right around the corner. Chris is going to join us the rest of the day. When we do come back, let's sneak in our NFL Blitz for today. Next hour, Scotty's going to join us from Las Vegas. Give us a little bit of an idea of how the Ags are going to do tonight against this Colorado State team. They pulled away late from that UNLV team, but you know what? That's always a tall ask, to beat UNLV down at their place.
It is hard,
and so there you go. We'll see what they can do against this Colorado State team, who I feel like there's a measure of vengeance that's coming up, hopefully for this Aggies team. So we'll see. And Colorado State's playing for their lives in a possible tournament bid as well. So tons going on. We'll chat with Scotty coming up, but we'll do our NFL Blitz next. Stay right here, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
All the latest news and notes from the league and the locals in the NFL. JJ and Alex bring you the NFL Blitz on 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
It's decidedly a basketball day, of course, with the Utah Jazz at home hosting the Toronto Raptors. BYU in action in their semifinal matchup against the Houston Cougars coming up in less than 20 minutes here. And then, of course, the Utah State Aggies taking on the Colorado State Rams tonight, and it's going to be a very, very late tip-off, 10 p.m. here Mountain Time. So we're going to sneak in an NFL topic right here. Are you familiar with the SoDo area of Seattle, JJ?
Yes,
because SoDo just got a little bit more cool.
Yeah.
And we got the Seattle Seattle Seahawks breaking news desk. Jeremiah Jensen is going to give us a little bit of an update.
The Seahawks just landed a top-tier free agent. The Seattle Seahawks have come to an agreement with NFL free agent wide receiver Cooper Kupp.
Hey now,
Cooper is going home. The Yakima, Washington native.
Look at that.
Has become a Seattle Seahawk.
Of course, went to Eastern Washington too in college. He was in Cheney there.
That makes so much sense, doesn't it?
I wonder what high school he went to in Yakima. Was he a Central Valley guy, or what was
Davis High School?
Oh yeah,
Yakima.
So Yakima has pretty good football history, but it's also very, very. It's a heavy wrestling community as well.
Would make sense.
So, but that, and again, cities are rated by food, but Yakima, Washington. I'll tell you right now, Miner Burger. Okay. It's a place called Miner Burger.
Next time I'm driving through Yakima, I'll pass on the apples and just go get a burger.
Oh, stop and get the applets and cutlets still, or cotlets. What do they call it? Yeah. No, it's not good. It's those jelly fruit, things that have like nuts in them.
Why would I want that?
I know.
I'll just go get the burger.
Everybody's grandma still pulls over and buys those. Yeah. But get the Miner Burger there in Yakima.
Okay.
Cooper Kupp headed to my dadgum Seahawks.
There you go.
I'm too cynical.
Sam Darnold throwing to Cooper Kupp.
Don't you love, like, when a guy? I bet part of this deal, not just a deal being made, but Cooper Kupp felt a little betrayed, I'm sure, during all this. He knows it's a business, but at the same time, he's been at the Rams for 8 seasons, his first 8 seasons. They kind of looked at you and said, "Man, you've been so great for this franchise. We got this other young wideout that we really love too. We don't know if there's going to be room for you, man." So he gets sent off. I'm sure Matthew Stafford was a little bit grumpy when you lose a weapon like that. And I don't think you're really thinking to yourself that Devontae Adams is like a great replacement, considering how, where he's at. But you do have Puka Nacua.
I'd take Kupp right now over Devontae.
1,000%.
Both, I think, are on the other side of their peak. but I would still take Kupp over Devontae.
Well, that's a big
but
move.
the money is here. So here's the other.
Oh, yeah, tell
I
me.
did not announce.
What's the actual deal?
So Adam Schefter reporting that Kupp and the Seahawks reached an agreement on a 3-year, $45 million deal. That's $15 million per year for Kupp. That's a lot of money.
That is. I don't know. Like, just think about the actual, like, swap out that you've had. I loved Tyler Lockett, but, again, speaking of guys who are probably on the other side of that prime.
Right.
But a guy who's in his prime and a guy who you never want to see leave a roster, DK Metcalf. Like, you have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf gone, and adding Cooper Kupp, though, feels pretty darn good. So you've got some pretty good young wideouts. I think Cooper Kupp with Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think you got yourself a nice little combo
yeah,
there.
and is Lockett going to come back? Even though they let him go? Is it a possibility?
He says he doesn't. He says he wouldn't rule it out, but, you know, again, part of this deal that I love is that I think that there's a little bit of like a – I bet there were other teams that were offering similar money, but he goes, I'm going to stay in this division.
Well, remember Bobby Wagner being released by the Seahawks? Where did he go first year? With the Rams.
He went to the Rams, and then he came back to Seattle.
Yes.
And then went to Washington.
Yes, where he's
obviously.
been since, but it's interesting that the Rams and Seahawks have played this little
back
game
and forth
of,
thing.
let's steal your legend.
Well,
let's rub it in your face for a year.
Interconference trades and swaps and things like that just doesn't happen very often.
No.
I mean, ask the Giants owners, you know, how many times they want to see the video of themselves talking about losing Saquon to Philly. There's this thing where it's just like you don't mess around with guys that are in your conference. It's
sometimes it works out pretty good, though. I'm a Broncos fan, and remember Neil Smith of the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the best defensive players? Well, the Broncos steal Neil Smith from the Chiefs and go and win 2 Super Bowls with him. So sometimes it pays off.
Neil Smith single-handedly brought the breathe right across
Nasal
America.
Yeah.
Across America.
He invented them.
Oh, man. And he'd paint them.
Yeah.
I mean, and they were about the size of my cell phone too. It seemed like he was like, I'm gonna make sure everybody sees these. Blah, and
Looked like a surgical butterfly that he put. It's like he busted his
made
nose open too many
He made it
times.
as big as possible. Man, Neil Smith. Remember how freaking good that guy was?
Oh, he's a beast.
You think about Neil Smith. You think about like those early '90s, late '80s, early '90s guys like Bruce Smith. I mean, if we're gonna go stay in the Smith defensive lineman.
Like the guys that sacked the quarterback back in the day were
murderous. Like
they were
absolute
like the guys
terrors.
Today are just athletic freaks.
Yeah.
The guys when we were growing up, they should have been wanted for
they may
murder.
have murdered some people.
Yeah. Like there was bodies they left behind.
I mean, think about like
Lawrence Taylor.
Lawrence Taylor. You think about like Reggie White. Like I mean, those guys were absolute.
Can you
terrors.
imagine being a quarterback in the 80s and 90s? That's why Joe Montana had so many back problems.
I think that Bruce Smith is a guy that I think a lot of folks were like, hey man. Anytime that like you get like the old heads talking about like guys who are the terrors, you know, and guys who are super athletic for how big that they were, Bruce Smith and Neil Smith both come up as guys that were like, oh, they were faster than all of our running backs, like, and they were 6'5", you know, 245 or 260 in a lot of cases. They were so freaking big. So there you go. All right.
Yeah. Oh, real quick. Do you want me?
Yeah.
I have a Bruce Smith story. You want me to share it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I had the great honor of doing a story. Blair Buswell, former BYU player who is now one of the great artists who sculpts
it's an
Hall
apropos,
of Fame busts.
Yeah, it's an apropos last name.
So
Buswell.
Blair Buswell, who has studios in Pleasant Grove, American Fork, in that area.
Mm-hmm.
I had a chance to stop by his shop as Bruce Smith was being sculpted
Oh,
by
he
the
was
great
doing that?
Blair
Oh,
Buswell.
wow.
And I sat there and I had a conversation with Bruce Smith.
No.
We did the story on KSL.
That is so freaking
While
cool.
he was getting his bust sculpted by Blair. That was one of my favorite stories from my career. And just hearing Bruce Smith sit there and tell stories of his career and get emotional about everything that was going on in that moment. Came to Utah to have his bust put together, and now it lives on forever in Canton. Pretty cool.
Not the only person in the American Fork Alpine area getting his bust worked on, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't know. It's a Friday. I felt like saying something.
Did you sell Bust Must Plus when you were in high school? College, maybe?
I'm looking at it. Dude, and remember, too, he had an 18-year career. Who plays 18 years on an on a defensive line in the freaking NFL, man?
He was a monster,
crazy.
man. It was cool to meet him and be a part of that. And yeah.
Were his hands small? I would think not.
I can't describe what it was like shaking that man's hand. I cannot describe
massive
it.
hands on that dude.
I don't have the words.
No. All right. Well, I'm glad the Seahawks got their guy. Bengals, real quickly here. Apparently, getting closer to a Jamar Chase and a T. Higgins deal. I don't know if those guys stay together for a long, long time. It's hard to keep that type of money together for a lot of time, especially when you've got.
Look, we just got done with this Rams story. You
I know.
keep Kupp and Puka Nacua
Yeah,
together.
and you've got a cajillion dollars that are sitting back there in the backfield with your quarterback already, and so that's going to be a tough one to keep together. But I hope they can, because that's exciting to watch. Kareem Hunt going to come back to the Chiefs again for a one-year deal. So there you go. Najee Harris, speaking of running backs, says Jim Harbaugh was huge to his coming to the Chargers. Say what you will about Jim Harbaugh, but people want to play for that guy, and he wins. And, it was just 1 year into it, and he's been a winner so far. Myles Garrett says, the reason I wasn't signing, sit down for this news. Because Myles Garrett says the thing that was the most unattractive to him about coming back to Cleveland was the not winning part. I mean, I'm just shocked. That on top of the fact that they never win, on top of the fact that they don't
They're
seem
the
like
Browns, bro.
that they're prioritizing wins, but hey, comes back.
They're not going to win after you sign that contract.
Former locals in the NFL news. Tim Patrick going to re-sign with the Lions again. That was a massive pickup for them, and that's an awesome re-signing for them as well.
Awesome for Tim Patrick. He found a home there. And I also mentioned that Simi Fehoko, former Mr. Football in Utah, Brighton High star.
Brighton Bengal, yeah.
Played at Stanford. He signed a one-year deal with the Arizona Cardinals.
Nice. Hey, nominate that youth sports volunteer that you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. The way you do it is you just go to KSLSports.com/contest. Listen every Thursday to our program. We read those winners off, and we celebrate the efforts of those youth sports volunteers who make a difference in their communities with the Hercules Hero of the Week, KSLSports.com/contest. Nominate someone today. That's all brought to you by the folks at Hercules First Federal Credit Union and Beehive Meals. We will come back, and we will keep chatting here a little bit. Right around the corner, we've got ourselves a little bit of an update, an Olympic update. Good news for us folks who are related to the NBC family. So stay here, 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Your home for the best coverage of the Jazz, Utes, and Cougars is right here on The Zone. This is JJ and Alex, presented by G2G Bars on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
In the skies, no one knows.
We're going to start singing Soundgarden songs.
Dude.
I know all the words.
This is appropriate.
Rest in peace,
I don't know
Chris Cornell.
I don't know if he's no longer with us. I'm just sorry. That was mean.
It's not funny.
We were just having a chat. We were just having a chat about my old stomping grounds up in Seattle of the going to the Dick's Drive-In. So I think our producer Alex is next level producing.
Pulled some grunge, a Seattle band.
Why not? And I know it was on purpose. I'm disappointed he didn't go with Spoon Man. But
would have been a little more upbeat. This is
their hit.
One of their slowest songs, though.
Yeah, but it is beyond their most popular. Like it is just, and that sound to it it's the grunge sound. Like, it's phenomenal. So.
Yeah, Super Unknown's great.
Boy, all this chat and all this got started off with us talking about Cooper Kupp going back to. State of Washington, playing for the Seattle Seahawks.
Now you can go get some dicks.
Get some dicks driving, man.
Yeah.
My dad always told the story, like when he was in high school, and he's in high school in the early '60s, and so, they're wearing their leather jackets, greasing their hair back a little bit.
It's kind of like Back to the Future, Biff.
Oh,
was your dad Biff in Seattle?
You know what? Some version
Seattle's
of that.
Biff.
Seattle's Biff. You know what? I like the.
Did you have to go back and beat up your dad's bully?
No, but I think because my dad's like, yeah, and so then you get the tire iron out of the back of your car, and you're like, all right, Dad, settle down, pops. Jeez,
wow.
Yeah, I think
your dad murdered some people.
No, I think he just sent the little fear of God into some posers.
Sometimes it's needed.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what are we even talking about?
Your dad committed crimes in the Dick's parking lot.
But anyway,
let's talk about cars.
Jordan Hanson, Scotty, next week on Tuesday they're going to be out at Sound Sleep Medical in Sandy, 8941 South, 7th East in Sandy. Go check them out, and go get yourself fitted up for one of these oral appliances. Get you not snoring tonight. Let's go. Let me see here. NBC and the Olympics have extended. How long has the Olympics been on NBC?
Since 1990. 2002 or
Oh, really?
1998, yes.
See, in my mind, like, it's just always been.
Like the 2000 Winter Olympics, I think, were the first one because it used to be on another network. It was either 98 in Nagano, the Winter Olympics, or 2000 in Sydney. That was the first NBC.
Right, and that's
Olympics.
when they did the split of we went to the 2-year cycle because it was 4 for a long time, and then I think we threw Sydney in 2000,
They used
and then we were at
the
that.
summer and winter used to be in the same year,
Yeah.
and they
Smart,
alternated that.
Smart move. But, yeah, $3 billion media rights deal that's including, of course, the Salt Lake City Winter Games that are going to be here in 2032. Is that right? Am I saying that right? 34. 2034. Yeah.
Right on. It's going to be on KSL and NBC, just as usual. So
You know what's wild?
you can't imagine how excited we are to be able to broadcast the
Yeah.
2034 games on KSL.
Well, and 2034 sounds like, when Tom Holmoe back in the independence era for BYU used to go, and in 2034 we'll be playing USC, and you'd be like, that's the announcement we got, 2034 is not far away. We are 9 years out. Like, we are closer to that than, many of the things that you think is actually in the very recent past for you, and it's not. So 9 years away. But, yeah, that's going to be part of it. That's a huge deal for us, and maybe that means the bosses will they send us to the Salt Lake games?
I think we're going to be there. I think we'll be there. Well,
Budget will accommodate.
well, Alex, we're assuming some things. It's 9 years away. So let's hope where they're still around to be sent to the 2034 Winter Games.
You know what? I'm showing up anyway. They can't stop me.
You're the George Costanza
Yeah,
of the 2034 Winter Olympics.
Even if they fire me, I'll still be walking in. Come on. Let's go. All we have to do is come back from this commercial break, then we're going to get right back into a very aggressive 5 o'clock hour. Travis Yost from TSN. NHL hockey, of course, is – if you're not familiar with TSN, what would you call it? Canada's ESPN?
It's Canada's ESPN.
Yeah. I mean, and Travis, of course, does a phenomenal job. He's going to break down this Seattle Kraken versus Utah Hockey Club firing up tonight at 8 o'clock is when the puck's going to drop. That means you're going to get a 7 p.m. pre. That's all going to be on 102.7 HD2 and also streaming on KSLSports.com and the KSL Sports app. We'll come back. We'll talk with Travis Yost, our good hockey friend. Stay here, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.